Hello everyone and welcome back to the Fortitude Training Podcast. This is your host, Coach Ren, and I am back with a shorter episode today, and I want to talk a little bit about core training. Now, we've heard a lot about having a strong core is important. It helps protect your back, and then a lot of us want to have a six-pack or a flatter stomach, so we want to try to train the core so that we lose weight there and it looks strong, it looks sexy, and all that. But I'm here today to tell you a little bit more about why your core is so important. And yes, I think I would definitely lean more towards having a strong core so that your back is protected, so that we're not throwing it out on a regular basis, and you're not suffering injuries and having to remain, in bed rest or just very limited for periods of time. The core is composed of many different muscles. It's not just your abs, it's not just your obliques, but it is pretty much any muscle that attaches to your spine or your pelvis. So like the muscles of the pelvic floor, the erectors, the lats, yes, the abdominals, the obliques, the QL or quadratus lumborum. There are a lot of different muscles that are made up of the core that we need to make sure are functioning properly so that our posture is good and we're able to lift things without pulling something in our back or herniating a disc. And so having a strong core obviously is important for many different reasons. So this is one of the things that can really help us lay the groundwork for lifting things safely and moving things around and maintaining independence as well. And basically, we want to be able to use the core to create tension that will protect the spine when we lift something. So the ability to contract the core without actually moving the spine, so that way we're able to lift something and transfer the force that we produce into the ground with our feet and our legs to our upper body. So when we lift something or we walk, we are producing force with the lower body against the ground. That force travels through the lower limbs, through the core, and then to the upper body to produce movement, whether you're lifting something off the ground or you're walking or climbing the stairs, whatever it is. And so if your core is weak, then you may see something like somebody hunching way over when they lift something, somebody walking with poor posture, or something like that. And obviously we don't want those things. We want to be able to move with good posture because that's where it all starts. If your posture's poor, then you're more likely to move incorrectly, whether that's lifting something or walking or carrying, and then there is trouble lurking around the corner at any given time. And so how do we train the core in a way that will transfer to these daily activities? Because when I talk about core training, you probably think of any sort of assortment of crunches or sit-ups or something like that. But there is another way you can train the core that will transfer over to lifting and carrying and running and walking way better than those. Now, they're still valuable. They're still valuable because the core muscles do produce movement around the spine and the pelvis. But the core muscles, along with every other muscle in your body, also has multiple functions. And one of those functions is creating stiffness or contracting isometrically. So when the muscles contract isometrically, they don't lengthen or shorten. They stay the same length, and they just stay tight. And they resist movement. So if you're picking like a heavy, like say a TV off the floor or something like that, then your core is going to tighten up, hopefully, and keep your spine from hunching over while you do that. It's creating tension, it's protecting your spine from the front of the body, while some of the back muscles are working to keep it straight from the back of the body. And you get this 360 degrees of support or pressure around the spine to keep it from moving in a way that you wouldn't want. Now, how do we train to help make the core function this way optimally? Well, instead of doing movements that create movement around your spine, like crunches or sit-ups, where you're flexing your spine, you're rounding it forward, you're hunching forward, instead of doing that, we're going to pick movements or exercises that produce no motion but resist motion. So a really good example of this that you've probably seen before is a plank. Pretty much any sort of plank exercise, when done well, can help train the core to contract in a way that will maintain a neutral spine when you lift or when you stand up or walk. So planks are a great way to do this. And what I would like to give you as an example first is the push-up plank. So the push-up plank is obviously in the top of a push-up position. So the arms are straight, the hands are on the floor, the elbows are locked, and the feet are together or about a foot apart at the most. Now, one thing that people get wrong when they do their planks is they hold them for a really long time, and they either start or they fatigue themselves until they get to the point where they're fatiguing, and then you see maybe their upper back hunch forward or their hips sag down and they're out of alignment. When we do a plank, we want to maintain the neutral position of your spine, and we want to keep it that way for the entire duration of the plank. So this means there will be a straight line from your shoulders to your hips, to your knees, all the way down to your ankles. Now in the push-up position, you're going to see a downward slope, but it should be a straight line. You shouldn't see the hips below the shoulders in a way where then if you follow the line down to your legs, the line slopes back upward. So you look like kind of a shallow U where your hips are lower to the ground than maybe your ankles or heels are. So we want to maintain this straight line. Now on top of this straight line where the knees are locked, the hips are straight and extended, but you're not hyperextending your back. We want to make sure that the spine itself is in a neutral position, because again, even if your body's straight, you could see that upper back, that thoracic spine hunching over. So we want to make sure right from the get-go that we know how to extend that. So if you were to be on the floor in this plank position, you would stick your chest out toward the floor as if you were attempting to touch it to the floor. And you'll see, if you watch it back in a video, you would see your upper back straighten out. So this is an example that we don't want to just do the movements, but we want to do them right. We want to do them properly so that these muscles are trained to operate in the right posture, so that way you can most efficiently perform any movement that you need to. So that would be the plank. Straight line, neutral spine. So if we wanted to take that a step further, we could do another form of a plank, which is called the shoulder tap. So the shoulder tap is a progression of the push-up plank. The big difference here is that you're going to bring your feet much wider. So you're going to go out wider than your shoulders. The wider you go, generally, the easier it is. And from here now, once you get that position, you get a neutral spine, the feet wide, and the hands are right underneath the shoulders. You're going to then pick one hand up off the floor, bring it up, touch your shoulder gently, your opposite shoulder with that hand, and then slowly bring it down to the floor again. And this will cause a lot of extra stress to your core musculature if you maintain a rigid body. And what I mean by that is you shouldn't allow your hips or your shoulders to twist when you pick your arm up. You're going to be tempted to lean over and rotate your body as you lift that arm because now you have one of your bases of support off the floor. But you want to keep your shoulders and your hips square with the floor at all times. If you are unable to do that and everything else is correct that I mentioned before, then you're going to want to go back to the push-up plank and work your way up. Let's say you do 3 sets of 10 seconds in that push-up plank, which might be all you need, and then you work your way up to 5, 6, 7, 8 sets of 10 seconds, and then try doing the shoulder taps. And the shoulder taps, again, should be done slowly. One of the problems I see people doing with that is they rush it. And so their core isn't really working. You're just throwing your arms around and you're not getting much out of it. So it should be done slowly. You should come up, you should touch your shoulder, maybe pause there for a second, maintain your square hips and shoulders, and then slowly bring it back to the floor. And I generally like to do sets of like 10 to 12 really, but you could probably do a little bit more than that. But generally 10 to 12 is a good place to be. So 5 or 6 per arm with that one. So that's a good progression. Now, let's talk about a different one, not a plank, but something else. So this one you can do in a bunch of different positions, but the main thing I want you to try to do here is do it standing up, because now we're talking about using your core in different positions, because when you pick something up, of course, eventually you're going to end up vertical, so we want to make sure that that core is working up there as well. So this is called an anti-rotation. So you're going to use a resistance band. You can wrap it around a doorknob or around some sort of vertical pull or some sort of upright, sturdy object, and you're going to hold it at your chest level. So the band should be set up so you can hold it at chest level, and we're going to stand with your feet about shoulder width apart, basically a squat stance. You're going to get upright, you're going to get tall, knees straight, hips straight, and you're going to extend your arms out in front of your body and then pull the band to the side. You want to do this without turning your torso. You're not trying to twist your spine. You're not trying to do like a wood chop type of motion. You're going to pull the band across your body, and you're basically doing a standing plank here. You're staying rigid. You're keeping your shoulders and hips square with the wall in front of you, or maybe it's the corner of a couple walls in front of you. But whatever it is, you don't want the body to move. And make sure you start with the band with a little bit of tension on it. So you should be standing far enough away from whatever the band is tied to, and you pull across with having a little bit of tension at the beginning. Now, if there's too much, you may lean over, you may turn your body without meaning to, so you might need to get a lighter band or not stretch the band quite as far. But if you do this properly, if you pull the band across your body, keeping your arms as straight as you possibly can, you're going to feel your core light up big time. And now we're working the core in the proper way without producing motion, but resisting the urge to move. In this case, resisting the urge to turn. And now you're getting good practice standing up and working your core, working those deeper core muscles. And that's ultimately what we're doing here. We're working the deep core muscles as opposed to the superficial core muscles. So the superficial ones, the ones on the outside, those are your six-pack muscles, those are your obliques and stuff like that. These deeper muscles, they reside underneath. Literally, they're another layer underneath those muscles that run perpendicular to those, and they are the ones responsible for protecting the spine and resisting motion.